Ma'am, stop.
They can't
Store
just
called
take
it
my
in.
food away. We got kids. EBT's gone. What are we supposed to do? Starve? Don't be surprised when we start taking it. People gotta eat.
America is the only place where poor people will fight to stay poor. You ever notice that America is like one of the few places on earth where poor people will shun the things that benefit them and make their lives easier? Like you're struggling to make ends meet. You work in 2 jobs, can't afford health care, child care, or even groceries sometimes. And instead of saying, yeah, I deserve help so me and my family can breathe, folks instead be out here like, nah, I don't want no handouts. The thing is, it's not even a handout. It's your money. You already paid taxes for it. That's not even charity. You're getting back what you put in. But we've been so conditioned to believe wanting help or needing help makes us weak or lazy that people would rather suffer than get relief. And the wildest part to me is working class people don't even trust other working class people. They dismiss what you say, but let some billionaire in a suit. They dismiss what you say, but let some billionaire in a suit say, who ain't never punched a time clock a day in their life. Tell them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and suddenly that's gospel to them. And I'm sitting there like, hello, this guy don't even own boots. All it does is keep the system broken. Because see, while you're too proud to accept housing, childcare help, food help, the things that literally improve your quality of life, rich folks are laughing all the way to the bank. And then you end up taking food and resources out of your own family's mouth just to show you're self-reliant. Wake up. Rich people don't like us like that. They're not losing any sleep about if your lights get cut off or if you can afford to feed your kids. Stop siding with people who wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire. Because the truth is, the only folks who really got us is us.
Welcome back to my YouTube commentary. I am the Kenyan Beast, of course. We are doing it the African way every day, every time. Allow me to say this statement. White America is drowning, or white America broke God's commandment that holds civilization together. And right now, they are drowning in the consequences they created. Okay? White America, they disobeyed God's commandment or broke God's commandment that hold civilization together. That's what I'm going to talk today. Okay? Because there are commandments from God that human being didn't write. And these are commandments that govern the universe. These are commandments that govern justice, govern human dignity, and govern the rise and fall of nations. When you break them, you pay for it. And America, white America specific, didn't just break them. They built their entire system on breaking them. And now the water is rising, the debt is being collected, the empire is suffocating on its own sins. Let's watch these clips here first and then we continue.
Oh, you want to know how poor white Americans are treated underneath the post about white privilege. All right, let's get into it. Poor white folks are screwed by the system too, no doubt. Poor white Americans face poverty, unemployment, crappy health care, and a failing education system. It's tough, it's brutal, and it's wrong. But guess what? You're not also dealing with systemic racism on top of all of that. White privilege doesn't mean you're living in luxury. It means that you don't have the added weight of racial discrimination. You don't have to worry about being shot by the police at a disproportionate rate for looking too suspicious. You're not getting followed around stores just because of your skin color. You're not getting your job applications thrown out because they sound too ethnic. That's the privilege right there. It's the shit you don't have to think about every damn day. Imagine being poor and then on top of that, facing a world that is rigged to suspect, ignore, and punish you based just on the color of your skin. That is what people of color have to deal with. The system is screwing everyone, but it's got an extra special screw job for people of color. So, poor white Americans are treated like crap, absolutely. But they're not getting the double whammy of poverty plus racial discrimination. That's what white privilege is. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's the absence of a second set of chains. Open your eyes and see the whole picture. The system is broken for everyone, but for some, it's downright brutal.
My taxes raised, and why do I have no one to work my farm? I do not understand this, and I know that this was not what Donald Trump meant to happen. I know that he doesn't want us good Trump supporter folks suffering, but we are. Donald Trump, please reverse this. I'm a white person.
I got a letter recently that my property taxes are going to go up $600 a year from now on. I got a letter that my homeowner's insurance is going up $60 a month. My propane company sent me a letter that my propane is going to double this year. They just came and filled up my tank. It was $1,000. That's crazy. Also, as a entrepreneur and business owner, I get my health insurance through the marketplace. So you have the Affordable Care Act. I pay $45 a month. They just informed me that if this bill passes and I lose my tax credit, I'm going to go from $45 a month to $660 a month for health insurance. I need to buy a new car and I can't, because the cars have gotten more expensive and the interest rates have gotten so much more expensive. I can't find a reliable car that has the same monthly payment of $450 a month that I've been paying now for a new car. Not necessarily new, but new to me. Groceries are insane, and it feels like every day I get a new email from another subscription that I have, whether it's Netflix, my website subscription. Everything's increasing in price. And I sit pretty much every day stressed about money, and yet I know that there are so many people in this country that are way worse off than me, and they're not making it, y'all. They're not making it. What hurts me the most is that there are so many women, especially, that just cannot afford to leave abusive homes, and they have to stay in it because of this economy. So are we great again, America? Like, is this what you voted for? Meanwhile, they all sit there in DC, not feeling any of these pressures, not doing anything about it, not giving a shit about the American people. I have been extremely poor, and I have been extremely wealthy. And I know from firsthand experience that the wealthy people don't notice it. And most people are pretty self-absorbed and aren't thinking about other people anyway. So we got to talk about this more. We got to raise hell. We have to let DC know that this is not acceptable. Regardless of your party, we have got to help each other.
There is a very interesting shift taking place as Trump rapidly ramps up his authoritarianism, and that is white people flipping the switch from capitulation to resistance. Let me explain what I mean. Since the end of World War II, the white community in America has enjoyed unprecedented wealth and opportunity as a result of a globalized American empire. And because of that, we have been less likely to buck against the system, even when we know that system is unjust, because the system has rewarded us so well. That's called capitulation. And these are broad brushstrokes here. I'm speaking very generally. The black community, on the other hand, because they have always been a target of the system, from slavery to Jim Crow to the war on drugs, they have always maintained a posture of resistance. And again, there are plenty of exceptions on both sides here. But what's interesting to see now is more and more white people, first of all, waking up, and secondly, taking risks to resist the Trump regime, taking to the streets in protest, directly confronting ICE officers, resigning positions of authority, and in our case, making a documentary that could cause us to get our tails sewed off, or worse. But it's worth it, these acts of resistance. Jesus said it like this: what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, yet lose his soul? Because we cannot be people any longer who go along with wicked systems just because they benefit us.
So I just watched a video of a white woman literally crying about the conditions of the United States, how she has to work 60 hours and she's looking at other countries and they don't even have to work 40 hours, how they can take a train for like pennies on the dollar anywhere they want. Meanwhile, like our country's infrastructure is falling apart. How it feels like there's no support nets. It feels like all the safety nets are dissolving, and she doesn't understand why. And I both hate and love to remind these folks that the reason why the United States is the way it is because of y'all. A lot of you are the descendants of folks, or might actually be some of the folks who were more invested in not sharing all of the programs, all of the initiatives that the United States was starting with marginalized people, specifically Black people. Y'all are some of the same folks who would have rather filled in the pools in your neighborhood than share them, shut down the schools and the libraries rather than share them, that you would rather vote against any forming of these safety nets or any protections for these safety nets rather than share them with marginalized people. Then you look up a generation or two or less later and wonder why you don't have these safety nets to protect you, because you were banking on your whiteness to keep you safe. And a lot of you learned pretty quickly after this election that you don't even have that to keep you safe. That unless your bank account has something like 7 digits in it, that the folks that you were banking on to protect you won't. And that some of the safety nets that maybe your mama or your family had relied upon, like SNAP or Medicaid or Medicare or any of those other basic safety nets, are going to be eradicated by the very people that you voted for. May I suggest, instead of crying, you strap up? The whole bootstrap thing that y'all be telling my people about. Remember that you get what you pay for. For everybody else who's not invested in crying, maybe some suggested reading. Some of Us by Heather McGhee. It talks about how equality is not a zero-sum game. This book has torn me up several times that I've read it, but it is essential reading. So for the next few years, might want to be diving in instead of crying on the internet.
Americans have started to leave the US because of the rise of authoritarianism. And this is something that should absolutely not be taken lightly. I literally saw a report this morning from Australia talking about how they have some applications from this year of people seeking human rights shelter because they are scared of what's going to happen to them. They want to have a backup plan if things go to shit so they can go to Australia and get a visa. And that's absolutely nothing new. Canada has also opened up a program to Americans that may potentially want to leave the country as a sort of political refugee. While that might sound crazy, we are absolutely entering into an era where this is something that people are starting to consider. And even some professors at Yale and other colleges in the US who teach about the rise of authoritarianism and fascism have left the US or have at least started to make plans to leave. And if that's not a wake-up call to other Americans to rally together to join the fight, I don't know what is. The president should not be able to send armed troops to terrorize American citizens. People should not be able to be kidnapped regardless of whether they're foreign born or American born, nor should they disappear. So I would really look long and hard into your decision to be apolitical right now, because things are changing rapidly in a very bad direction.
Can we talk about how miserable white people are for a second? Like, you know that white people are miserable, right? Like, have you ever looked a white person in the eye, even if they're like a big mental health person? You just look deep down and you're like, brother, you are not happy at all. And truly, it breaks my heart. But one reason, I think, one of the main reasons that a lot of white people, a lot of us are really unhappy and miserable is because we lack internal congruence. Now, congruence is a concept we learned early in grad school to help people heal. And congruence is basically internal alignment. Values and actions are on the same page, right? Like, we accept every part of ourselves. We feel peace, security in who we are. Congruence. And no matter how hard you try, you can never find internal congruence if you're not congruent with the world around you. If you're not understanding what's real and seeing reality and affirming what's true. So like white people who deny patriarchy and capitalism's negative effect and oppression of the world and genocide that's happening around the world, like, that's incongruent with reality. That is going to have an effect on us internally. Because to deny what's happening in real time, we have to deny certain parts of us, certain emotions, certain thoughts that come up. And the more we run for that, the more incongruent and separate we feel, the more dissonance that comes, the more miserable we are. And a lot of times we're not actually dealing with our own pain and our own reality, because we're all suffering under capitalism and white supremacy. Like, it affects us different ways in intersectionality, but like, it affects us white people too. You don't think a stormtrooper in the fucking Star Wars movies hates his life? You don't think he hates being bossed around all the time? You don't think poor white people living in the empire, like in a city walls, like in a Game of Thrones, like, you don't think that they're miserable under it, even though they're not miserable the most? To be congruent inside, to not be miserable anymore, it takes accepting the realities of the world, seeing how those toxic systems affect us, and then moving to actually be congruent. Because deep down, humanity has goodness at its center. So yeah, white people, we're miserable because we're not congruent, because we're denying the realities of the world, and thus denying ourselves.
Now, let me get straight to it. When I say commandments, I'm not just talking about religion only. I am talking about God's universal laws, the laws that even ancient African civilization knew. honor human dignity, do not build wealth through oppression, do not shed innocent blood, do not lie on nations, do not steal land, resources, or identity, and do not exalt yourself above others. Now, these are not just 10 commandments from a book, okay? These are principles written into creation itself, and America broke every single one for 400 years. They broke it with no repentance, no accountability, no intention to change, and right now the consequences, the economic, social, spiritual, and political, are swallowing the nation, all of it. This is not punishment from black people. This is cosmic justice catching up. Okay? And God's law is very simple. What you do to the least of these, you do unto yourself. America forgot this. They treated black people as property, and they pretended it will never happen to them. They built churches while hanging black bodies on trees. They held Bibles while hunting escaped slaves. They preached about Jesus while destroying African civilization. They violated the commandment of dignity, the one laws that determines whether a nation stands or falls. So, because a system that humiliates others eventually humiliates itself, you see what's happening right now. And that's why I played video of white people. They are regretting. White people are calling the government. They are calling the system. When you look right now, you see millions are homeless, families are collapsing, children are addicted, communities are broken, and economic build on debt instead of integrity. You see a society that destroys others. Okay? Eventually, it self-destructs itself. And that is the commandment they ignored. The commandment of truth. They refused the commandment of truth. They refused it. You know, God's other cosmic law is that a kingdom built on lies cannot stand. So America lied about black intelligence. They lied about black history. They lied about African civilization. They lied about white innocence. They lied about their own crimes. And they lied about everything, even themselves. They lied so hard that they started believing in these lies. Okay? But truth has a habit of waking up, especially in this generation. And now you can see something like African history is resurfacing. Black inventions are discovered. Whitewashed stories are collapsing. And the world is learning who built civilization and who pretended to build it, because truth doesn't need permission. It all rises. Okay? And when truth rises, the liar falls. America is falling because it violated the commandment of truth. And the commandment of justice, again, America mocked it when you talk about justice, because God said that you will reap what you sow. But America said no. America did not want to follow that because they thought they were powerful. They thought tanks and bombs could protect them from consequences. They thought banks and corporations could shield them, and they thought privilege would save them. But when a nation hates justice, justice comes back with fire. Okay? And that's where America is today. Mass shooting every week, white youths hopeless, police violence exploded, economic collapse, nation refusing the dollar, African countries cutting ties, allies turning away, you know. So this is a spiritual judgment. The universe is balancing these books. They ignored the commandments of humility too. Humility is another commandment they disobeyed, and that's why they are drowning. You know, a nation must never exalt itself above others. That was the commandment. But America said they're chosen, they're exceptional, they're God's favorite, They are the greatest, they are the leaders of the world, they are the moral authority of humanity. And when a nation elevates itself about God's principles, it falls harder than all others, And right now, their economy is falling. Right now, their influence is shrinking. Right now, their youths are lost. Their politics are embarrassing. And their power is exposed as illusion. Okay? Their racism is backfiring. Their arrogance has isolated them. So they are drowning because they trusted supremacy more than they trusted God's laws. Now, when I talk about this commandment, the commandment they mocked, there's this commandment called love your neighbor. And let's be real, there was never a commandment America wanted to follow, because love your neighbor means don't enslave them. Love your neighbor means don't colonize them, don't steal from them, don't write their identity, don't destroy their family structure, don't criminalize their existence, and don't profit from their pain. And America did the opposite. They built a system where loving your neighbor was considered weakness and domination was celebrated as success. They didn't love black people, but they used black people. They didn't love Africans, but they extracted from Africa. They didn't love the world, but they manipulated it. And now the universe is simply giving them back what they gave to the universe. They cannot build a superpower on hate and expect love to save it. You cannot build the wealth on exploitation and expect prosperity to protect you. You cannot build your image on lies and expect truth to defend you. So America rejected the commandment of love, and right now the consequences are hitting them like a storm. Now, America wanted the blessings without the responsibility. This is one thing we need to talk about it, about white America. They want the blessings of God, not the discipline of God. They wanted to be a nation under God while breaking every rule of God. They wanted wealth without compassion. They wanted power without responsibility. They wanted freedom without justice. They wanted security without morality. They wanted prosperity without sharing. That's impossible. Okay? Even ancient African civilizations understood that wealth without righteousness collapses. And America pretended that they could cheat the system. They thought that God would overlook everything because they went to church on Sundays. But God is not impressed by building. God is not impressed by a flag. God is not impressed by national anthems. God only responds to how you treat human beings. And America, his track records is horrifying. And so now the blessings is leaving them, and you can see it, and they're trembling because what? You can see it. The economy is shaking. Housing is impossible. Mental health is a crisis. Okay? So that's not just a random thing. That's a nation losing divine protection. Now, again, let me talk about the spiritual principle of harvesting. And America times is up. Every civilization in history reached this moment. Rome had its moment. Greece had its moment. Britain, France, all of these countries had their moment. And now it's time for America. Because once a nation reaches the point where it seems overweight its righteousness, then the circle turns. It doesn't matter how rich you are. It doesn't matter how strong your military is or how loud your propaganda is. God's laws don't negotiate. The harvest has arrived, and white America planted for 400 years. They planted racism, they planted exploitation, injustice, domination. And their descendants are living inside the consequences of their ancestors. They wanted generational wealth, but they inherited generational judgment. And that's how the universe works. Okay? Africa, on the other hand, was the commandment they ignored. This might shock some people, but let me say it clearly. Africa was the commandment America broke the hardest. Because Africa is not just a continent. Africa is the cradle of life. Africa is the mother of humanity. Africa is the source of spiritual order. Africa is the birthplace of divine wisdom, and God does not take lightly how Africa is treated. America kidnapped Africans. America looted Africa. America destabilized Africa. America insulted Africa. They lied about Africa. They rejected the humanity of African people. You see, they broke the divine rule written before any Bible, any religion, and any constitution. And the rule says, honor your source, and your source will sustain you. So America dishonored the source, and that is Africa. And now the source is rising, and the empire is trembling. You cannot curse the motherland and expect your nation to prosper. Now, why America is falling while Africa is rising, it is symbolic. It is something obvious. In America, depression is rising, you can say that. But in Africa, youths are rising. In America, suicide is rising. In Africa, consciousness is rising. In America, homelessness is rising. But in Africa, you can see cultural pride is rising, Pan-African unity is rising, resources control is rising. So one side is collapsing under its weight of injustice, and the other side is awakening under the power of truth. And that's not coincidence. That is spiritual mathematics. Okay? And today, the world is proving that you cannot hide injustice anymore. America used to control the narrative. They controlled news, education, Hollywood, global institution, diplomatic language. They shaped the story of humanity. They painted themselves as the heroes. They painted Africa as the villain. But right now, today, the commandment of justice is kicking in because truth travels faster than lies now. Black creators are louder than all media. Africa has more influence than people expected, and the world is tired of pretending that America is the good guy. Okay? So the spiritual order has shifted. Again, we have the commandment of humility as we talk, how America rejected it. Humility is not weakness. Humility is alignment with God's order. But America embraced pride as a culture. Okay? And you know, when you embrace pride as a culture, and you don't acknowledge your mistakes, your history, your wrongs, one day it will turn against you. Okay? Now American youth are saying their country is hopeless. Why? Because one continent is embracing humility and truth, the other is drowning in arrogance and denial. And God's laws favor the humble. Now, America oppressed strangers. America oppressed strangers. Okay? They took strangers, turned them into slaves, turned them into property, turned them into permanent underclass. And they did it proudly. And that's what is eating America too. So when a nation rejects commandments, when a nation reject all this, at a time it will come that it will come against them. So you see what's happening in America, the crying, the economy, the dream is gone, everything is just awkward. That is because they have broke the commandments of God. They were told to set the captive free, and this commandment is not about literal jail only, it's about system that traps people. America refused to set the captive free, the black captive, the poor captive, the immigrant captive, the indigenous, and the oppressed. They built prisons instead of solutions. They built ghettos instead of opportunities. They built police departments instead of community structures. They didn't set anyone free, but they tightened the chains. Now when you look around, white Americans feel like they are the captives now. Captives of debt, bills, politics, inflation, stress, fear. They built the trap and now they live in it. And that's how spiritual law works. Okay? When you talk about other commandments, there's commandment of truthful leadership. America does not have leaders. America have managers of chaos. You know, real leaders Our leadership is built on truth, wisdom, moral clarity, honor. But American leadership is built on lying, manipulation, distraction, division, and ego. They don't guide people, they entertain them. So all of that was sign that America, what is doing, is not gonna be here for long. Okay? And divine shift has begun. And the signs that shows divine shift has begun, just look at the US dollar is losing global dominance. African nations are rejecting Western control. You see black consciousness is rising globally. White fear is increasing visibly. So these are not just random events. These are spiritual forecasts. These are indicators that the divine shift has already begun. Okay? Empire dies loudly and truth rises quietly. That's all I have to say about this video. Tell me what you think on the comment section. Until next episode, peace out.